Professional boxing is not only a sport that is equally dangerous and beautiful at the same time. It's also a show. Time passes, civilizations develop, science and technology progress. But the average spectator, as in ancient Rome, wants only one thing from the participants in the fight in the square of the ring: bread and circuses. Tough, strong-willed, uncompromising fighters, sparing neither themselves nor their opponents, have always been held in high regard by a wide number of fans. But there are times when fans are interested in a boxer, not because of his great talent or ability to have a spectacular fight for the amusement of the public. Sometimes interest in a boxer is caused only because of his impressive size. One of the most famous was Italian heavyweight Primo Carnera. So was the Russian giant Nikolai Valuev. The giant from St. Petersburg started boxing at the age of 20, and then, in the fall of 1993, he turned professional. The main thing about this boxer was his impressive size. Height 7 feet, 85-inch arm span, and fighting weight within 308 pounds. When entering the ring, the Russian giant simply stepped over the ropes, but his boxing skills weren't the best. The beast from the East had many technical flaws, especially in defense. He was slow, and the power of his punch, which is somewhat paradoxical with such impressive size, was often not enough to knock out an opponent with a single blow. Understanding that the increased attention will continue until their fighter learns bitterness of defeat, promoters, at first, choose mediocre opponents for Nikolai. The initial stage of his career as a pro went smoothly. For 9 years, Valuev had 28 wins, 23 of which were by knockout. In the summer of 2002, the beast from the East fought Ukrainian Taras Budenko, for whom this was only the 4th fight in the professional ring. No one expected anything, considering Budenko was an easy opponent. But the Ukrainian, significantly inferior to Nikolai in experience and size, but technically superior, gave his opponent the hardest fight out of all of his 29 fights. The fight turned out to be extremely tense, and, despite the knockdown that Taras had in the 8th round, the question of the winner remained open until the very end. The final round put Valuev's fans into a stupor, and those who were involved in his career. Getting into close combat, Budenko stunned the Russian several times. The judges did not appreciate the efforts of the underdog, giving Nikolai the victory with an impressive advantage: 117-111, 118-111, and 116-112. After spending several years after the fight against Budenko having not a big amount of fights, from July 2004, Valuev began to fight against stronger opposition. In the space of 12 months, the beast from the East had 6 fights. Average Richard Bango, Attila Levin, and Clifford Etienne were knocked out, as well as the future European champion Italian Paolo Vidos, and strong Gerald Nobles was disqualified for regular low blows. However, given the difference in height of 12 inches, he probably could not reach higher. In October 2005, the Russian giant entered the WBA heavyweight qualifying match. His opponent was an experienced American, Larry Donald. The 38-year-old boxer was an extremely uncomfortable opponent: fast, technical, and agile. During his career, the boxer lost only 3 fights, and only against strong opponents. Guys who managed to defeat the veteran were Riddick Bowe, Kirk Johnson, and Vitaly Klitschko. Moreover, only the Ukrainian puncher managed to win against Donald by knockout. In the last 2 fights, Larry confidently outboxed the legendary Evander Holyfield, and the fight against average Ray Austin ended in a draw. The beginning of the fight against Valuev was not going well for the veteran. He could not catch the right rhythm in any way, and the beast from the East had a slight advantage. However, over time, Donald gradually became better and had advantage. Due to his speed advantage, Larry managed a lot more accurate punches, and good footwork kept him out of trouble. The second half of the fight was dictated by the American, and after the final gong, few doubted that it was he who would go to the title fight against John Ruiz. To his misfortune, among the doubters were the judges: 114-114, 115-113, and unimaginable 117-112. Valuev's victory by majority decision. The best assessment of the decision of the judges was the deafening whistles of the audience.
Представляете, дает 114-114 под свист публики.
Nikolai Valuev. Ebenfalls für
114-113 дает в пользу Валуева. С большинством голосов Валуев побеждает в этом бою.
December 2005 was marked by Nikolai's championship fight. The fight against John Ruiz, who had the WBA title, as expected, turned out to be extremely difficult and stubborn. The much more experienced Ruiz, who fought such serious opponents as Evander Holyfield, Roy Jones Jr., David Tua, Hasim Rahman, Andre Galata, and Tony Tucker, had an advantage at the beginning of the fight. However, as time went on, energy began to leave the Puerto Rican with an American passport, and the fight leveled off. The fight was not full of entertainment, and was mainly at close range, with an abundance of clinches. Ruiz landed more accurate punches, but Nikolai's hits carried more threat. The fight went the distance, and the judges gave the victory to the Russian: 114-114, 116-114, and 116-113. Nikolai Valuev entered the Guinness Book of Records as the biggest title holder in the history of boxing.
Haye Valuev.
The championship reign of the Beast from the East did not give boxing fans fights against world-class boxers. Average Owen Beck and Monty Barrett were knocked out in turn, and his fight against strong Jamil McLean turned out to be an unfortunate farce. The fight was extremely promoted by all those involved in the organization as the toughest fight in the history of boxing. Valuev's height is 7 feet, McLean's is 6'6", and the combined weight of the boxers was over 570 pounds. The approximately equal fight was already over in the third round, but not because one of the participants in the fight managed to deliver a devastating blow. When attacked, McLean unsuccessfully twisted his leg, collapsing to the floor in a lot of pain. His kneecap popped out. At the end of the fight, Nikolai got his 47th victory in a row, and said that he would certainly beat the record of the great Rocky Marciano, who retired from boxing after 49 victorious fights in a row. A quick reality check happened to Valuev in April 2007. Significantly inferior in size, but with much better technical skills, Uzbek Ruslan Shagayev clearly demonstrated that you can't go far in boxing on size alone. Not being the fastest boxer, Shagayev, against the slow Russian giant, literally floated like a butterfly and stung like a bee. Ruslan's blows broke through his opponent's bad defense with ease. The advantage of the challenger was so overwhelming that already in the middle of the fight, the beaten Valuev told the coach, "He is better than me. I can't keep up with him." The only thing that, following the results of the fight, Nikolai could be happy about was his ability to endure missed blows without visible consequences for himself. The number of great left crosses he missed during the fight would have been enough for 2 fighters. Shagayev's excellent performance was almost overshadowed by the judge's decision. One judge, who apparently was watching another fight, put up an unthinkable 114-114. Fortunately, 2 of his colleagues did not argue with their conscience and common sense, giving the victory to Ruslan, 115-113, and 117-111. The last scorecard was the closest to describe how the fight went. Nikolai returned to the ring, winning on points over the undefeated Canadian Jean-Francois Bergeron and Sergei Lyakovich in turn. This allowed him to once again have the fight for the WBA title, which by this time had become vacant. The rematch against an old friend, John Ruiz, in August 2008 was almost a copy of the first fight. The same grueling fight was hard for both boxers. Initiative passed from hand to hand, and no one had a clear advantage. The judges unanimously gave the victory to the Beast from the East at 114-113, 116-113, and 116-111. The 35-year-old giant became a two-time world champion. December 2008 was marked by a fight between Valuev and the most famous opponent in his career. 46-year-old Evander Holyfield by that time already was a shadow of his former self, and many believed that the Russian would easily defend the championship title. But the veteran did not care about everyone's opinion. He intended to win the heavyweight belt for the 5th time, and at the same time break the record of the great George Foreman, who at the time was the oldest champion in history, by knocking out undefeated Michael Moore at the age of 45. The real deal approached the fight against Valuev in his best shape in recent years. From the very beginning, it became clear that Nikolai would have a difficult evening. Light on his feet, Holyfield danced around the giant, delivering rare but accurate punches. Being in constant motion, the veteran made the opponent look awkward, not allowing him to hit with even a jab. There was a noticeable difference in the level of boxers. Valuev's pressure did not do anything. The veteran's stinging jabs and hooks regularly hit the target. But in the second half of the fight, fatigue began to affect Holyfield's tactics. This allowed Valuev to equalize the fight, but there was no talk about Valuev's advantage. At the end of the fight, Evander, like most of the spectators and experts, was sure that he had done enough to win the title. But the judges literally punched the veteran in the gut. 114-114, 115-114, and 116-112. Valuev's victory by majority decision was greeted with contemptuous whistles from the audience.
From Russia, with love, Nikolai Valuev.
Hell, I'm shocked days.
November 2009 was marked by the last appearance of Nikolai in the ring and the loss of his title. The ex-world cruiserweight champion, controversial David Haye, chose tactics for the fight that were reminiscent of Holyfield's in his fight against Nikolai. Excellent footwork kept the Englishman out of trouble, and at the end of the rounds he exploded with short combinations, trying to impress the judges. It is not known whether such a minimum program would have worked, but in the 12th round there was an episode that finally removed questions about the winner. Haye's powerful left hook hit exactly in the jaw and made the Russian giant stumble and almost sent him to the floor. Valuev was right on the verge of defeat, but David failed to put an end to the fight and win by knockout. As a result of the fight, a close but well-deserved victory went to David, twice 116-112 and 114-114.
Und daran kann es gar keinen Zweifel geben. Verdienten Erfolg von David Haye.
2010 was marked by Nikolai Valuev's negotiations on the championship fight against Ukrainian Vitaly Klitschko. But the matter did not go further than conversations. Nikolai rejected Vitaly's $2 million guaranteed fee offer and pulled out of the fight. And later, due to health problems, Valuev announced the end of his boxing career.